break, we will continue.
Thank you, Mayor. This is our third budget work session. We have a pretty extensive presentation for you today. We hope that you don't wait till the end to ask questions, please. This is an interactive conversation. Rebecca's going to kick it off, but I would be remiss if I didn't make sure that I let you know that we wouldn't be here if it weren't for our Assistant Finance Director, Lisa, and Rebecca. Rebecca has been working nonstop, night and day, 2 o'clock in the morning on this process because this is new to her. She's jumped right in like she is a finance professional, and I tell her that all the time, and she's like, "Well, I'm kind of round big numbers," and I'm like, "Well, I'm a little more in the details." So she's been a great balance to me, whether she thinks it or not. We've had some tough conversations, we've had some good conversations, we've had some easy conversations, but at the end of the day, tens and dozens of hours have been put into this presentation, and you get this nice, tidy document, but a lot of work does go into it, and I think it wouldn't be fair if I gave all that credit to Rebecca. So please know she's the reason why we're at this point. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Like Danielle said, we've had quite a number of budget work sessions. You've had 2 morning ones and then 1 evening one. So I will amend that. It's actually our 4th budget work session. And we're hoping we can get you all the things you need today to make some decisions moving forward. So on that, we had a request to learn about our new credit card processor, which is called Invoice Cloud. Invoice Cloud will be going live in our billing departments in October. So here's a little bit about what this new processor is. It gives us more payment options, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, Discover, kind of things we've had before, but also allows us to break into the newer ways of paying with PayPal, PayPal Credit, Venmo, GPay, which is Google Pay, and Apple Pay. You can also text to pay. You can also pay multiple accounts in one transaction. Currently, if maybe you're a landlord or for some reason you have multiple accounts, you have to go in and do them as multiple transactions. In this new processor, you could pay them all at one time. There are the option to have 3 payment reminder notifications each month if the customer so wants, so that you can be reminded of when your bill is due, and it doesn't come as a surprise. There is an auto authentication for returning users on both the IVR, which is the phone service model, when you call in and you push the buttons, and on your mobile pay ability. So that means that they make sure that it is you without us having to do that in between. There's an option for additional email recipients to receive the receipts. Again, this is very useful if you're taking care of the bill for a family member or a landlord, to a tenant or another type of situation where you want to make sure that more people can see that receipt of payment. You can also notify if you keep your card on file of upcoming card expirations. And then there's software technology baked in that detects if it's a lost or stolen card being utilized. So it protects those who might find themselves in that position.
I have a question.
Yes.
Wait, maybe before I forget it. Are they going to be able to use their, like some people use their benefits card to pay their utility, like people who are retired and on Medicare, they have a benefits card and they can use that to pay. Are they going to be able to do that online with this? Or?
So any card that they're able to use today to pay their pay, we'll still keep. We're not going to get rid of anything. Okay. Now, exactly which portal person, we might have to double check on that, but I'm 99% sure that those run on one of the credit card operators. I'd have to double check though. So.
Just curious. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So what are some of the changes on the user portal? One, it eliminates the need of the knowledge of the last payment made during the login process. Currently, if you were trying to log in and pay your utility bill, you need to know how much your last payment was down to the penny. That's not always something everybody remembers. You will be asked to set up a new online user profile with the processor, and then you'll get an immediate payment confirmation that will reduce or eliminate duplicate payments. So in our current one, there's a little bit of a delay. This will tell you right away, so you're not trying to make sure that it got through. You'll know right away. we had a question about how can you pay without a fee? And again, this all comes from our assistant finance director and the utility billing department. You can pay, as you've been able to, with cash, money order, and check in person. You can do an ACH bank draft through utility billing. There was a question if you can do it just a one-time. You can. However, if you utilize that through the online portal, there still might be a potential fee to be incurred. We also had to ask if there's a fee to use a debit card, and there will be a fee. It would be the same fee as the credit card because they're processing them all together. And then the question if you can pay over the phone and if there is a fee. That phone operated system does charge a fee. These are just pass-through fees. The city does not get any part of this fee, never has. It doesn't come to our books. Right now, in the new processing system, it will reduce down to 95 cents, where currently it's $1.25. So even customers that are currently using that will see a 30-cent decrease in that charge. That is kind of the quick overview of the new credit card processor. Yes.
I have a question. So on the, where did it go? On the alternative options, PayPal, Venmo, Google Pay,
Yeah.
Apple Pay, are there fees?
Yes, those would be the fee, and those are the
Those
ones.
would go through the same,
That's where you would probably have that 3.25% fee that we have been discussing with you all, if that should be passed on to the person utilizing it. And the reason that's coming up right now during the budget session is, one, it does affect your budget, namely in utilities. But more than that, they need to know how to assess that fee before the system goes live in October.
yeah.
So this was kind of the perfect time, if you will, to bring this up. So that kind of is a great segue to what we had. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I do. I'd like to make a clarification of something I said at the last work session that was incorrect, because I had a note here that Lisa clarified for me. So, and I know Rebecca just said this, but I need to clarify because I said it. The Cash App options, the Venmo options, the anything that isn't an option but is an option now, but is like a debit or credit card, will have a fee. So we have the added option to pay with those options, to pay with those types of payments, but there is a fee associated with it. Just want to clarify.
Are they percentage fees or a fixed fee?
Percentage fees. It's all going to be the same percentage fee. They're running all of those types of payment as if it was a credit card.
Okay.
That's a big picture approach. So that kind of gets me to that full circle about that this new processing software goes live in October. And then this came to you because there's a consideration to pass forward that processing fee, that about 3.25%, which is approximately $260,000 over all your funds. About $240,000 of this is in utilities and about $20,000 in general fund. And then there's a question on there, if you did choose to pass forward those fees and see that savings, if you would want to continue to keep that savings all in the utilities or transferring to the general fund. So lots and lots of options. Actually, that's going to kind of be the theme for today, is all the options.
Yeah.
So the pros and the cons of either way is what?
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch
The
that.
pros and the cons of transferring to the general fund as opposed to leaving them in utilities.
The pros for you as you get to the general fund is you might notice that there might be some need to help prop up the general fund if you choose to do some other initiatives, which again, we'll circle back to that. We'll come back to a decision on all of these, but you'll see pretty quickly why that might be something you choose to do. But other than that, keeping it in the utilities is always a good place. Helps keep our utility funds healthy. We're just now sitting with the proper reserve amounts. So you could go both ways. But
Can you keep it in utilities or put it in bond and interest for utility only, like sewer, wastewater, or water projects?
if we move things to bond and interest, I would have to double check, but usually they have to be water or sewer projects that are funded from water and sewer funds. So, but there may be a water or sewer project that comes up in bond and interest that needs that funding.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
was probably trying to say.
Lots of,
Thank you.
like I said, lots of options. Theme for today.
Okay.
Lisa just messaged me and said that, is the card you're talking about, does it have a 16-digit number, an expiration date, and does it look like a debit card or credit card?
Yeah, my dad's does, yeah.
Okay. If it has a 16-digit number and works like a debit or credit card, it will be processed like a debit or a credit card.
Now, when you mention benefits, are you talking about benefits that come with their medical insurance? Because I have a benefits card with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and it's strictly for over-the-counter supplements.
That's strictly for what?
Over-the-counter supplements.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's a benefit card that comes for, you can go to the pharmacy and you can use it for things over-the-counter that are approved. I don't recall,
I don't think you can pay utility on that.
You can, I've done it.
because I have, I'll look back and,
They have different tiers and different plans, so the one he has the ability, he has the over-the-counter one where he
Okay.
gets so much allowance there, and then he has one where he gets allowance for utilities, to help with utilities, or, yeah,
okay.
basically utilities or rent or whatever. Yeah, and I've used it here before, but I used it downstairs. I came in person and used it for him, but, yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Well, again, we can go through some of that more as we continue through. So I'm going to walk you guys through a new updated cash balance sheet. And I want to talk about a couple things. You have this sheet as a separate piece on your dais up there. This should look like the sheet you're always used to that Donna has provided for you for many, many years. And we went ahead and worked this sheet out after the last budget work session when we realized that there was a difference in the sheet we'd given you based on gap fund accounting and cash accounting, which is how we do our budget. So this sheet I will walk you through, and it'll make a little bit more apples to apples comparison that we're used to because we usually do our budget in cash accounting. This has been one of those learning curves with using our financial firm, Baker Tilly, because they look at our audit and they go, oh, you do gap accounting, fund accounting, that's how we'll present your budget. But that's just not how this organization has ever done their budget. So it looks a little different. So I'm going to start walking us through this, and please stop me if there's any questions. So we'll start at the top with the revenue assumptions. 2024's ending cash, if you go back to last year's budget book, which I'm sure you all keep with you as a prized possession, I keep mine. I look at it every day. We update the ending 2024 cash balance. It actually increased by about $776,000. That is from what Lisa and I can tell because we hadn't finalized the closing out of the books through audit during the budget last year. So that was an adjustment, a rather large adjustment because of some of those, we still were kind of cresting a wave. And you'll notice that, those of you that were here when GIF pulled its original building permit, it came at the end of the year. It was a very large building and permit. It came also with some additional engineering fees, probably the largest building permit we've pulled to date. And how that got accounted for over the 2 years because it was at the end of a year kind of settled down a little differently. So this is kind of, there was an unexpected, not completely unexpected, but unbudgeted revenue kind of windfall, if you will, for lack of a better term, when that project started. We knew it would come, but how exactly it landed and how it got accounted for had a little bit of a shakedown. Your ad valorem, so keeping the mill levy at the revenue neutral rate, so the same amount of dollars coming in from 2026. That's a change in your, and this kind of keeps it fairly flat across the board from the 2026 budget projections that had a flat mill levy. So instead of a flat mill levy, this is more of a flat dollars in, so that reduces it by about $179,000 from if you go back and pull this sheet from last year. Your sales tax, it's about an increase of 3% from your 2025 actuals. That is about a 1.5% increase year over year, which is what we're seeing. In licenses and permits and charges for services, that is an estimate from the engineering office. Our city engineers are about 98% confident that that's an accurate number. In our motor vehicle tax, the 2026 numbers, as we heard from the county, were actually overstated due to an error on their part. The 2027 number is accurate, so that's why that goes down. The motor vehicle tax is not a number that the city comes up with. It is a number that is given to us by the county to input. So we just have to take it on their calculations. The use of money is sitting at $1 million. Again, those of you who were here during 2020 might remember that use of money used to be budgeted at a certain amount, and then when interest rates went negative, the actualized amount was substantially lower. So what we're doing now to estimate is we estimate now from current guaranteed returns, meaning that this is what we have that we know will come in 2027 from what we have out currently in CDs and such forth. But it is a more conservative approach in case there is something that could drive interest rates down so that we don't have that gap again. That's what we're trying to avoid. And then in your transfers in, we're continuing to not utilize those direct transfers from the utility budgets. As you remember, the general fund for many, many years was supported by about a $570,000 transfer from water, wastewater, and $80,000 from sanitation. But this is the first year that they're all actually removed from the budget. So they haven't been spent since 2022, but a portion of them has still remained in the budget until this year. So this is a final removal of that from about $630,000.
And could you explain why, maybe for Jason, Melanie, just in case, why we leave it in the budget?
Why we had left it in the
Why we
budget?
leave it, yeah.
So yes, in those other years, we had left some in the budget because, again, those revenue numbers were a little unpredictable, especially in things like use of money and permits and charges for services. The reason those are fluctuating as highly as they are from, if you go back to, say, 2019 to 2022, is due to the new growth, especially in the industrial area. And one or two projects can fairly wildly change those numbers. Or new housing development. So since the growth is fairly new, if we kept a 3-year rolling average, we're trying to balance it out a little bit. And then again, use of money, Donna was historically very conservative, especially after 2020. We ended up bringing only about 10% of the budgeted revenue in that year, and it caused a serious constraint in general fund at the time that we were dealing with an emergency situation. And so we're tended to be as conservative but practical as possible. So trying to balance those two. So we kept those transfers from the utility budgets in because we really weren't quite sure where the revenue was going to come in at. And so that was kind of a little bit of an insurance guarantee.
Can you go back to this ad valorem?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of this number of 555,000, which was the additional revenues.
Right.
So
That's not in here.
this has nothing to do.
No.
The way I'm reading, I'm not, maybe not understanding.
We did not, so that additional increase in assessed valuation is not plugged into your general fund budget. And the reason it's not plugged into your general fund budget is because the direction, at least that I've heard so far, is that you weren't sure if you wanted to take a portion of it or any of it.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so if you choose to, we can run another example with keeping the mill levy the same and taking in that increase. But this is holding that that cash the same.
The other thing, since we're on that real quickly, in the last bunch of paperwork, and I don't mean to, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I had this all over my couch last night and was trying to put it in some order. And since you laid this out, I'm thankful. You noted, and I know you do every year, the increase represents an increase of X amount of dollars per mill. So then I began to think, well, okay, what is the mill that it is generating? What mill is it last year's mill levy? Because there was a piece in there for 2026 that showed a mill at 69.
Right. Are you
And
looking
I
at
thought I
revenue
didn't-
neutral versus that? So this is where we're at. This was your estimated assessed valuation. That shows your increase.
Yes. And it says each mill increased by 76.79. What is the base mill that you're basing that on?
Last year's, I mean,
Last year's city
well,
mill?
your mill, the value of a mill just changes after your assessed valuation. How many mills we levy is up to this body, but it's just the value of a mill.
But the difference is what? 8 million or 7 million some odd dollars?
Yeah,
So,
which is why it's about that 7,679.
because I did some math on that and I thought, well, that's just like 10%.
Yeah,
So basically that's.
that's pretty much how you calculate a mill. Yeah.
Okay, that's
You just
my question.
calculated a mill.
That's my question. How did you arrive at that?
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
what
of course, of course.
That's what I wanted.
So yeah, it's a million, stands for a millionth, if I remember correctly. So yeah, you just
Okay.
divide it. That's how you know what a mill is.
Kind of like in the process of being able to determine property taxes when you take the
Yeah.
11.5 times the blah, blah,
Exactly.
blah,
Yeah.
divide it by, okay.
Yep.
All right, now I understand. Thank
Okay.
you.
Can you go back to the other revenue line at 643,000? What is that other revenue? Right above the transfer in line.
Great question. I might have to give my mind a bit of remembrance of what all goes into that line.
I can pull it up while you keep going.
Yeah, I might have to double check it though, because I don't remember off the top of my head. There are certain things that are kept separate, mainly due to audit, that sits there. Some of them are, I just cannot remember. It's a fairly stable line. So yes,
I'll pull it up.
I think she'll work on that. Is there anything else on the revenue assumptions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the expenditures then. So in the personnel services line, the majority of the increase, it's a 7.6% increase over 26, is the COLA, merit, and health insurance. This is again following the implementation of the pay study. The COLA and merit total together is a 6% increase, and then health insurance is budgeted at 5%. And when you add those all together, the overall line item is 7.6. You'll also notice, again, if you go back and find your one from last year, just in case anybody wants to do that after this, the projected amount includes continuing the implementation of the pay study. In previous years, the pay forecast did not include that. It included just the health insurance increase, but not the merit or COLA. And so to be, in my opinion, a little bit better reflection of continuing the implementation of the pay study, I went ahead and pushed that through the forecast. That's just a personal decision.
Lisa must be watching.
I'm sure she
I
is.
just received an email that says the majority of that revenue is Harvey County ambulance assistance.
Oh, perfect.
So it's the payment from the county for fire EMS, for EMS. excuse me.
Perfect. Appreciate that.
I got a question on the personnel services.
Sure.
Every year I ask this, and it all ends up being, oh yeah, I forgot to ask. How many positions, so is this, how many positions are currently vacant and have been vacant for over 60 or 90 days that are in this budget?
I probably not very many. I think 2 off the top of my head.
I'd say under 5. I
Yeah.
think that's yeah.
Yeah, I think under 5 by a lot. Yeah, I'm not even sure of that, but yeah, I'd say under 5.
I could find out how many have been open longer than 90 days.
Yeah. Anything else on the personnel services line? Okay. In the contractuals, you'll see an 11% increase. That's just a reflection of actual costs. Commodities and supplies. This looks a little different as it's a 46% increase over your 2026 budget. But again, this is that reclassification that we talked about early on in our budget process on how we purchase commodities. This is really just showing where lines are moving. So instead of all of the transfers to the MERS, some of it went to the IT, some of it was budgeted in general fund. It was really just reclassification of how funds are spent. And I know one example that I brought up was that it used to be that we would buy, especially in IT, a physical thing, and then we had it, and it was an item. And so maybe it was an equipment, but now those equipments are cloud-based subscriptions, so now they need to be put into operating expenses. So this is really just a cleaning up of making sure that the things that we're buying are coming out of the right funds. But because we all did it in kind of in 1 year, it looks like it's a bigger increase. The transfers out did decrease because, again, we did compile those MERS and try to take a most conservative approach. So you'll see that 14% decrease over the 2026 budget. It is an increase over the 2025, but again, that's those classifications. And again, the consolidation of the MERS. So, anything else on those two items?
And the MERS are within each department
A little bit. So
kept track of as far as,
yes, and
instead of
also
being a
kept
line
together.
item.
Yes, and also kept track of, there's still line item transfers in there. But what we've done is we've made a master MER, and in general fund especially, there's a lot of departments who's come out of general fund. And so we did the calculation based on the fact that they all actually in general fund live in the same fund. The money goes to basically the same savings account, if you will. So we consolidated that, and then our financial advisor amortized the cost of each of those things if all the funds were held in common, because they are. And so we were able to see a little bit of savings there because we kind of had to, we were able to pool resources where one fund, maybe if they're just tracking it on their own, looks like it would go in the red, but because they're all actually living in the same pot, we were able to realize a little savings. We went out 7 years in our projections, so it might be something that changes over the next 3 or 4, but we kind of took our financial advisor's best practice guidelines of a 7-year lookout.
I have an answer to your question. As of 2 weeks ago, the only position that has been open for more than 90 days is our assistant city attorney position. So, and we have 5 positions, a park seasonal mower position, a water maintenance position, an environmental operator in training and intern, and a Meridian Center event server position. So 3 of the 5 are seasonal positions.
And I would mention one other that is budgeted in there but not posted is the finance director.
Oh, correct. Good point. Yes, that would not be on my list because we're not actively looking for.
But it is
Good call.
budgeted. We did budget for a finance director.
So two positions. The salary for the finance director position is being used to pay for the contractor that we've hired. So we will not.
We won't realize any
won't.
salary savings there, but it is a budget. We did keep it in the budget.
Just a comment here, we're still, in our proposed 27 budget, we're spending $2,170,489 more than we're bringing in.
Yes, sir.
Just food for thought.
Yeah. And if you do remember, again, if you go back and you compare to last year, there was a plan to continue to deficit spend in that when that budget was approved, which is what we're doing. So, and then the not so fun news is that gets us to an 18% as a percentage of expenditures. Our reserve policy is 15%. And then as you project into 2028, with all things being equal, we are down to a 2%, and then we begin to dip into negative territory. There we go. So anyway, so that's why, to answer your previous question, Commissioner Valentine, when you talked about why would we want to move it to general fund, this could be a reason if you wanted to
Shore
bump
up.
up the health of the fund a little bit. So, all right. Well, moving right along, we've gone over the estimated assessed valuation, and hopefully this is making sense to everybody by this point, and we're all comfortable with our mill math.
is that in here
Yes, should be after.
after?
Oh,
Oh, it's down here. Okay, got it.
okay. Oh, yeah, there, I did skip this slide that but Commissioner Kane kind of talked about where our overall proposed budget is and that difference. And really, that it's not a lot of new spending. Our biggest line item growth, as we say every year, is personnel. We are a people-operated business, and we're people-driven, and that becomes our largest cost item. Okay. We are bringing this back as a proposal to capture 50% of the assessed valuation. This was just one idea that staff heard after our last budget work session. So this just is a little bit of math for you. If you took 50%, it would capture about, we're going to start, this is where my round numbers math comes in, about $275,000. Of that, you need 121 to maintain your bond and interest, special liability, library, and airport. They cannot take a mill levy decline. They have to take the entire assessed valuation. And in addition to that 121,000, in the proposed budget you got for the airport, taking it the city's contribution to 150,000, you would need to increase that airport mill levy from 0.635 to 0.796. That's about 148,000 without the motor vehicle tax, so it rounds fairly nicely. So that would take another 29,000 off of that. Or if you were going to fund it to meet the other 60,000 that you'd all asked about, the county might be willing to support, then you would need to take another 60,000 on top of that. So if you just did the proposed city portion to bring up the airport, you'd have about $125,000 left to invest in other options. If you took the additional 60, obviously that goes down.
I understand why bond and interest can't be reduced. We have those obligations and everything.
Correct.
Why can't the library take a hit? Why can't the airport take it? Is it a statutory
The
thing?
library sets their own mill levy, and their mill levy is taking the full.
Okay, so I think that's the narrative that needs to be shared, is that the library sets their own.
Right.
We don't have any authority
Sure.
over changing that.
Yes.
So,
Okay, on the airport thing, on that graph there, you show 4876, and then down here is the additional.
Correct.
So,
So that's an actual, so the one that you see in the graph is the current, if you kept today's mill levy and you took all the assessed valuation. But what I gave you to look at is that actually to fund the airport as we've considered it, to make it in the black, you actually need to increase the mill levy that goes to the airport. And I
That
think,
was to raise it to 150?
correct. There you go.
so that's on top of the 121? Okay,
Well,
okay.
it's moving it from 121 to 150.
If you do, yeah, to the city's portion.
Okay,
It's the difference. It's about $35,000-ish.
Yeah.
okay.
So, but again, and then the other option is, and we can talk about this more a little later, but if you also, what to do with the other $60,000 that we had in our original estimation put towards the county.
Yeah. Maybe I might, if it's okay to talk about a little bit about the airport now.
Let me bring up.
We have formally made an ask to the county. At your direction from the last work session, I believe I got a head nod to make that $150,000 ask. I put it in a letter and explained the reason why we forwarded it to the county. Shannon has already emailed me back some questions. She's going to take it to her commission. I don't know if they'll fund. That being said, assuming that they don't, we have an opportunity to either A, fund to the 150, just to get the airport at least in the black. You can also fund the difference that if we don't know if they're funding, we could go ahead and move the money into the fund. That's just an option. What that does is just ensures that if they don't fund, we have the funding. I also wanted to ask Brian, and I haven't had a conversation with him about this. We do have a lot of projects going on at the airport right now. There's a lot of things in the air, and I don't know how that will. Things in the
No pun intended.
You made a funny, didn't even
Wah, wah.
I know. Things in the air. It's a craziness of words, Ed. It's a craziness of words.
That being said, I want to make sure we make a calculated decision of, I think the 30,000, the 120 to 150-ish, I think that's a prudent decision. I think it's time to keep pace with the increase in expenditures. That investment is coming through many other ways throughout the community. The increase above that to offset the county, whether or not they pay, I wonder what Brian thinks about holding off and seeing where we land at the airport in the next 18 months. If we are not doing well next year, if we actually need the cash, we can do a transfer we can reduce a transfer. We can kind of wiggle our way to make sure we're in the black. But I wanted his opinion if he thinks that above the 150,000 would be something he'd like to see at this session, this budget work session. Does that make sense, Brian?
Yeah. I don't actually think that we need to see above the 150,000. I think it would be fair to say that the city has been funding the airport at a higher rate based on ad valorem and the valuation of that going up, and it's been very convenient for the county to write a check for $90,000 on an annual basis. I would like to see at the very least that the county come up and be an equal partner from that perspective. And so, we've been, last couple of years, the city has been funding it at about $115,000 to $120,000. And I would like to see the county come to that level, at the very minimum, come to that level. Now, that doesn't mean in the future, so when we raised the fee, if you will, the co-sponsorship fee of the airport back in 2017, 2018, since then I've added 2 personnel. I've added a maintenance technician who's been, I can't tell you how instrumental he's been out at the airport. And I've also added a line attendant. And so we've even added people because our operations have changed and increased. And so we needed to do some of these things. And that has been reflected in our budgets, but certainly not reflected in the increased sponsorship, if you will, of the airport. So I think it's now getting to the time where we have to start thinking about that, because we are seeing a year-over-year increase in pretty much everything, not just personnel expenses, but insurance and utilities. And some of that we do pass on to the customer and some of it we don't. So, but whether we need the full 150 from both entities at this moment, I'm not sure that that's the case. And our hope is too, with some of the activity going on at the airport, that this year it's been, construction mode, and hopefully our tenant will go into testing mode, and we'll start to see commodity sales, i.e. fuel sales to tick up once they start actually testing and flying and all of that. So that certainly would help the bottom line too, if we see increased revenue from fuel sales and things of that nature.
And to clarify, we assumed 150,000 from the city and the county, which gets us to our reserve policy. Now, as you can see, we budgeted in 26, and also the actuals in 25 show that we've been okay with dipping below that. So if you wanted to continue that, there's essentially $60,000 in wiggle room, which essentially would be the difference the county ask. I would say my recommendation to you is to fund it at least to the 150, which would bring that ending cash from 89,000 to about, depending on what if the county says no, that 89 will turn into 20 or 30,000 based on these numbers.
I have little interest in funding the county's portion.
Absolutely, sure.
Period.
Sure.
Okay. And my question is, and I'm not hearing the need, as in things aren't going to happen if we don't fund the county's extra portion.
That's what I'm hearing too.
Okay.
That's what I'm hearing too, yes.
So then, to me, the question is do we need to adjust their levy to get them from the 120 to 150, or do we spend out of their cash, is what my question is. I would say if we can, and as you just proposed, spend out of their cash, but spend out of their cash to get them from the 120 to the 150 and let it be at the mill levy that it is.
Well,
Oh, I think that takes us in the negative.
yeah, so the 2025 actual is $40,308. So that's where we ended in 2025. We are consistently dipping into.
Oh, I see, the
there is
89
no-
is.
we have to
with
make a
the cash
decision to increase.
assistance, not with,
Yeah.
with the ending. Looking at the starting balance, yeah.
Okay, before you go any further, I am still, I'll just add a pun to this. I can't get off the runway with this. I'm not seeing what we're talking about here.
Oh,
So
yeah.
maybe I need understanding. You're talking about 150.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing here, okay, so we need, if we add an additional 30, basically
We're
29.
looking at
Look at the
the
one on the screen.
full airport budget.
Well, I'm looking at this because this is what we're talking about as far as increases and that, so.
And you're right. What we should have done was add in a separate one. So if you take the 2025 actuals, that 117,748 cities ad valorem, if we kept revenue neutral rate, that would be how much money, including motor vehicle tax, would come in. When motor vehicle tax throws it off by a little bit. If you take the increase in assessed valuation, you come out at about $120,000. The issue is to remain with the fund in the black, it needs at least $30,000 more, which is why
Okay, that's where the 29.
that's where your 29,000 and why I recalculated a higher mill levy to reflect that need of $30,000 because otherwise the fund is actually negative and we can't pass a negative budget. How we fund it or if it's revenues or expenses, totally up to the governing body, can't have a negative.
Okay, thank you. I want to keep that here. So, options to reinvest.
So looking at what's on the screen, has a projected ending cash of 90,000, but that was with the anticipation of 60 additional coming from the county, which would mean that we would end at 30, which is where we're targeted to end 26 at.
Exactly.
Bingo, make it happen.
Okay.
Can you put that in an email?
Yeah.
So yeah, so if you do that, then the city's mill levy would just raise. Is that what I'm hearing from
From
a consensus-ish?
the airport's portion from 0.635 to 0.796, right?
Okay, that's, yeah, I'm just double checking. Is everybody on
Just the 30,000.
just the 30,000? Okay. That's the recommendation of your airport director and city manager. I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. Okay.
And
Is it-
I think we should add that we absolutely, me specifically, probably need to convince the county that this needs to be done. That we are co-owners of the airport.
It
It's
needs
not
to-
the city-owned airport, it's the city-county-owned airport. They do benefit from the property tax collections that we make at the airport. There is a sizable property coming onto the tax rolls in 2028. And they will benefit from those property taxes just like we will, just like the city of Newton will. The airport does not necessarily draw specifically from property tax increase. If everybody out there started paying property tax, the airport wouldn't see any more money than we do today.
Right.
Because we don't
Well,
get a
go back to that
direct
slide.
benefit.
Go back to that slide, because we can have that discussion, okay? That one there, all right. So technically, if it's needed, okay, and we need 50% partner buy-in and everything, what that would do is our 150 would actually be added to their 90 and split in half, and then that's all that we should pay is half. So that 240, so we should only pay 120 and they should pay 120.
Oh, I got you. You want to,
Yeah,
that's an option too?
which
That
is
an
essentially what the city's been paying already.
Which is essentially what
Yeah.
we've been paying already.
Yeah. If I may, the
I
reason.
just don't want to carry their balance for them, because the moment we pay it for them, then there is no reason for them to pay it.
Sure,
And we shouldn't ask of them any more than they need to pay.
sure.
So if we're saying, oh, well, we don't need the position, or we don't need that support for another 12 months, then we should never make that ask.
Sure.
But what we need to fund that airport needs to be divided in half.
And the need recommendation that came essentially from myself and Rebecca is based on our policies. And our policy says we will have a reserve policy of 5%, which is about $96,000. So that's why we went with the 150, because short of, I mean, thank God nothing has happened at the airport, but what you see cash in there is what he has to work with
Right.
to run a full-blown airport. And $30,000 does not give me, the city would have to pick that up.
So that's why it's fine with it being the 150 on our side, but the ask has to stay and remain to the county that this is your portion.
Yes, and that's, I would be happy to share the letter and the documentation that went over, and we also asked to, in light of the time, since it's so tight and it's very end, went ahead and just sent it, but we will be more than happy to go and present this actual request to them, so.
So is it prudent to, instead of asking, just state,
Send 'em a
you are
bill."
50% owner of this airport? It's not an ask, it's,
Invoice them.
this is what your portion is, this is what our portion is, that's it.
I don't know how
Yeah,
my
we-
letter, was my letter was more of an ask, wasn't it?
Yeah, but, yeah, I mean, you know, first letter goes out, you ask. Second or third letter goes out, you tell. I mean, that's, the first notice you get from your credit card company is, hey, if you don't mind paying this, you owe this, right? The third letter you get from a collection agency is like, you will pay this,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, the first one that went out was the nice. And let's play nice, and that was great.
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with that at all. And to say that, we don't know, I mean, we have floated this idea to them at our joint meeting, so it's not coming out of left field.
Right.
The number was not necessarily determined, but none of this is coming out of left field. And they haven't said no. They just haven't said anything at this point.
Well,
Yeah.
Shannon's asking really great questions about the revenues, like why this number increased so much. So we're getting those answers to her. So I hope we'll let you know how that turns out.
All right. Well, if we stay at the floated proposed idea of the city bringing up that airport mill levy, then you have about, in your proposal, again, we're playing in the sandbox situation where you assume half of the assessed valuation, then you are at $125,000 left to invest in the priorities that you see best suited. So some of the options that we've brought to you would be, there's some position requests. You could fund all or a portion of those positions. You could invest it in your bond and interest fund. You could fund the agency requests out of the general fund instead of economic development. You remember you had your agency requests of about $40,000. Those have historically come out of economic development. You could keep it in the general fund and just help that fund balance moving forward. And we already talked about the last one about funding the airport up further, which seems like that was not one that you wanted to pursue. Why you think?
Question. Is the credit card fee pass-through, that was another number that we were talking about having?
Correct.
Is that reflected?
That is not in here. This
Okay.
is simply,
That would be on top of?
yes, it would be on top, and that's why, that's kind of a two-parter.
Yeah.
That's a cost reduction in the utility department instead of a income in, and so kind of semi-separate,
Yeah.
but great clarification. I mean, Commissioner Valentine has always asked us about mill levies, so here's your new mill levy chart. If you were to decrease the mill levy to take only that 50% assessed valuation, the total mill levy would decrease to approximately 70.78 mills. And this is staff's proposed breakout of those mills, although I think there is an error in this slide because it doesn't show the airports.
It doesn't show it at 7.
No, it doesn't.
The general fund is higher than what is on the
Yeah.
plan, the overall plan.
Yeah, it
So
needs to
maybe
be, it would be moved.
Okay.
So this is one example. The total mill levy, it will remain the same. How we divide the mill levy, that's your big questions for today. But the total mill levy would remain at that 70.78. And again, the airport, I mean, the library mill levy is set by the library board, and they came and presented to you at your last budget work session, and so theirs is not one we can move around.
So, Rich, if you recall at one of our workshops, you had commented about using the cash reserves. And I'm not opposed to that, but protecting it, because as we move forward, we don't want to endanger that
Right.
amount. So having said that, then that leaves us with, I'm wondering if I'm just trying to talk and think this through. I'm wondering if we need to look first at what we want to fund as far as the asks. And then in coming to that conclusion, then we figure out how we're going to pay for that. I mean, I'm in my thinking, and as I was thinking this through in this past week, is that what we need to do? Because we're looking at all this stuff, but for my own self, I'm thinking about the asks. What do I really want to keep and fund? And then we go from there. But that's just my
That's
approach.
perfect. Absolutely perfect. I think I would turn it over to Daniela to give you, since she and I worked through it, her city manager's recommendation of the asks in front of you, and maybe we go from there.
I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself on the biggest asks of staff, but the last few weeks in working through the nuances and getting to cash and arriving at the 125,000, assuming you funded the airport and the library received their funding and the bond and interest received their funding, that 125,000 to us is a reflection that we really should not. In my recommendation, based on my finance experience, Rebecca's recommendation, we really should not fund any of these positions. These positions that we brought forward were our wants, and some of them are needs. That being said, based on where we're at financially and looking ahead, if you look at that cash projection, funding those may mean making some big decisions next year. And I would much rather not fund a position and see how we can rework or realign our duties so that we can do the important work and maybe set aside some of the things that aren't necessary at this point. And then determine, maybe wait another year. There's a lot of unknowns, especially at the legislature. My inbox is full with, right now, the city manager, the coalition in Harvey County, Sumner, Sedgwick County, the city manager getting together to give testimony to allow us to not pigeonhole us in the future for these increases in assessed valuation, at least in new growth, because we are concerned that we won't be able to take that in the future. And so if next year we're not able to take that, and you're seeing we have a $2 million gap pretty commonly, it wouldn't be prudent to increase the compounding effect of new staff today.
And I'm not hearing an urgent operational risk if we don't fill these positions.
That is, yes, that is my gathering from the data that I've been presented, going through these personnel requests, even in our public safety departments, and I've mentioned this before, our public safety we're doing a public safety study, and that study will help us determine if the staffing model we have is a good staffing model, if it could be reworked, or how to move staff around so as to fill the need, but not necessarily add FTE. If we can't do that, we will come to you and say, we cannot do that, and this is affecting our call response, this is affecting mental, and Andy could probably tell you that it is in some way right now. That's why we're doing the study, and Chief too, I'm sorry, and Craig too. That's why we're doing the study, because we need some help, some experts to analyze through some of this, alongside our public safety departments on that avenue. The rest of the positions, we will go through them just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at and the things that we're looking at to reframe what we do. But at this point, my recommendation is that you do not fund them based on this cash projection.
That one thing that makes me really ill about all that is the nuisance or the environmental control officer. That's what really troubles me. I understand what you're saying, and I have to say I'm in agreement, because right now, I have heard from so many people. And one of the things that really impacted me, I don't know why I didn't think about it in the very beginning, but Social Security recipients. And I know this to be true. It's true that each year Social Security recipients get notice about what their increase in their Social Security dollars will be, but that is typically eaten up by increases in their Part B premium. So they don't realize any real increase. So then on top of that comes a tax increase and increases in food, all of it. So they don't get ahead. And that was the part of the piece that I had not really thought of, because I've thought of the medical side of it only. You know, they get their increase, but it's eaten up in their Part B. And so as that came to me, I thought, you know, there are people that are begging us to control our expenses. And I want to be able to go back this time to people and say, and that's why I asked for mills and what the dollar equivalent is, because people think in terms when they hear mill levy increase or their taxes. And we've typically, when we've done mill levy increases in the past, they hear that and then they see the dollars that are associated with that. So I want to go back to people and say, we are lowering this mill, and this is the equivalent of it, how many dollars, whatever that number is. I want to be able to tell. So if we're doing 2 mills, if we're lowering 2 mills, what is that?
It comes out to be about that 275,000 that you'd be cutting out of the budget. In your last presentation, I didn't copy it in this slide again, but in your previous presentation, we didn't get to it as fully with that work session, but I had given you what the decrease of a home valued at about 250,000 would be. It'd be about a savings of about $95 a year if you take the reduction. That's just one example, but kind of gives you a little benchmark.
Okay.
That's considered the average home in the area, so.
Well, and the very fact that we're even doing that is going to be an encouragement and probably a surprise to most residents. They're not used to us giving back, if I can use that word. So I think that's what we need to do. I'm concerned, though, what is going to happen, because we won't be hiring, at least this year, an environmental control officer. And I really struggle with what I see. And I know Jerry's one man, but we have a community of 18,500 plus people. And I know you keep hearing me harp on that. And I don't expect you to have answers right now, but what can be done to maybe improve what we got going on or increase until we can get to that point where we can hire that individual?
Well, I can tell you we don't maybe have answers, but we do have a lot of options. And I think Daniela can we're going to go through code enforcement. There you go.
If I may.
Yes.
Danielle, is it okay?
Oh, yeah.
So just to make you aware, we have changed some of the way we address the nuisance items. So we're getting to those a lot faster than we have in the past. And hopefully that helps with a lot of the calls of, weeds and things of that being overgrown. So we're making a conscious effort to hit those at least one day a week, rather than waiting till we're in the area to do it. We've made a conscious effort to just pull off one day a week and go hit those. So that should help some of it, some of your concern there, I know in the past.
And Ed, please feel free to jump in on this code enforcement position request. So we currently have one code enforcement officer covering the entire city. And we are bringing this to you this was actually at your request, or what sounded, I think last year we had some head nods like, yeah, this would be good to bring forward. We did find that the peer comparison, we're a unique city in that we're so close to the metro, but we are so large. And so we kind of took from 40,000 population to maybe 7,000 population, first class cities, some second class, but mainly first class. And they typically have 1 to 2. I say 1 to 2 because some had 1, some had 2. So somewhere in between. 2, nicer cities had either a support or an additional officer. It is not common to have 2 officers doing proactive work. They get involved in the reaction, because there's so much reactionary work that being proactive is not something necessarily that a lot of cities do. Maybe your Overland Parks and your Kansas cities, but what I'm finding is that it's hard to do that. Not saying it's impossible. For us, that second person would take on that model, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Not that you don't know this, but this is currently some of Jerry's duties. Laura at the front office, she also supports Jerry in some of the administrative work that he does, or is part of his responsibility, because he is so, his time is out in the field and meeting with people and communicating with the residents. So this first framework that we use is a reactive framework. A complaint comes in, Jerry goes out, assesses the property, but also assesses the block. You guys already know that. The proactive one that Kathy has mentioned and would like to see in previous conversations is more of a systematic process where, we have the reactionary, which will always be there, but we will have then a process where we're looking at sections of town, or we're having, there's a calendar year, and we assess our properties and our community more systematically than someone called and now we have to go check it out.
Well, with the growth that we have had, and that we hope for and anticipate, I'm always going to err on the side for proactive. I guess it will begin to help people be aware that there is a systematic approach, and that what is expected, instead of always just having to react. I understand both of those sides, but I'm always going to advocate for proactive. That way, it's kind of like training your children. If you don't do it and you only react to the things then on a bigger scale, this is somewhat training people to know what to expect, because as we grow, that just makes more work on the reactive side, I think. And I don't propose to know everything about it. I just know what I see and what I hear. That's the part that's troubling. But I know that this year our focus should be giving. I want to use the verbiage "giving back." Is the only thing I can really think of, and I realize that means that we probably won't be able to do this year.
Yeah, I just don't see, I'd love to be able to fund that position, but we can't keep taking all of the assessed values and sweeping those into our budgets.
Yeah.
Our households can't go and get second and third jobs in order to pay it. And that's effectively what we're doing, is we're just finding additional revenue. I think we need to cap expenses. If we really, really needed the position, we would need to find cuts somewhere in order to make it happen.
So this and what we've talked about is based on 2 mills. So I'm assuming, Rich, I'm going to ask you, because of what your interest level was the last time, that we're not touching the ending fund balance.
We are, in this budget, we are touching
Well, we're
ending
not.
fund balances.
Well,
We are deficit spending in this budget.
We're deficit spending by over $2 million.
Yeah.
So obviously, we're touching cash on some
Well, no,
level.
but I'm talking about when we were going to address the asks and that, rather than accepting any of the revenue, I thought my understanding was that you had thought about what could we do, and not accepting any of the revenue, but paying for some things out of.
We are. We're paying $2 million worth of expenses out of cash reserves. And
So we're not, okay. So this is solely based on the revenues that we have coming to us, the additional revenues. Am I?
Can you go back to the
You're
cash line?
talking about the additional revenues that we are going to receive, or we're set to receive.
by taking half of the assessed value increase.
Yes.
we're
The
still- we're still-
125,000.
We have an increase in the property taxes received dollar-wise,
Yes,
but a reduction in the mill.
right. We're not receiving all of it.
Correct.
Okay.
So
But
yeah,
I thought you said you had not plugged that into this budget. You had not.
I
plugged-
did not. So if say this $125,000 here, because all of that forecast was just general fund. For example, if you wanted to go back to that general fund forecast and this body decides that this $125,000 needs to stay in general fund, I will update your forecast to include another $125,000 in ad valorem revenue. That will move your forecast number by about $125,000. In the grand scheme of things, it's not going to move the needle a lot in your forecast. You're going to see in year,
That's,
yeah, you're going to see then in year 28, all things being equal, which my crystal ball isn't quite that clear, but if all things were equal, that would make your ending balance in 28 come up from 577,000 to about 700,000. That would be your difference
Right.
if you just
if you,
took the cash and did not spend it
Right.
in general fund. That is one option. The other option is, we didn't get to it yet, but your bond and interest fund is also, in the projection, it also starts to go to the negative. Now, that is not an unusual thing that you all have seen. Donna and Suzanne used to remind you all that these are just where we put things. There is no,
They're plugs until they're projects.
there you go. All of them have to come to the commission. If they're going to be bonded, you're going to see them multiple times. We're going to come to you with the project. We're going to come to you with the bids. We're going to come to you with the intent to bond. So you'll see it many times. And we can always update this projection for you during that process if it's something you would like to see in those packets moving forward. So if you did want to take on a bond, you could get that spreadsheet updated to reflect that newer bonding piece. So I can actually scroll down to those really quickly and let you know what's currently in there. You'll see 2027 new debt service. That includes Spencer and the KLP rail service spur payment. And then in 28, it's Hillside, those 2026 roadway improvements you just approved, the C-Clip projects, and the Plum Street Bridge. Now, again, bonding years are determined with our financial advisor, Baker Tilly. They're subject to your all's approval. This is a snapshot as of pretty much this morning of actual things that have been executed. Things change, as you know, on a meeting by meeting basis. So it will always move forward, but that is something that if it's helpful in your decision making, that when you are considering a project, we can update that bonding schedule to reflect it. But currently that's where it's at. Those projects, again, most of what goes on our CIP is development driven, or they're projects that, again, they would be larger projects that you all would have multiple times to give direction and comment to. So that is not a set in stone amount. That is a projection.
I got a question.
Of course.
The KLP rail spur, is it all that done and buttoned up and? Because at some point, there should, that should have a revenue. Is that going to have its own enterprise fund for rail and have its own?
The rail will, but the rail spur payment, from what we're looking at, it probably will not cash flow out of there. This is actually estimated, the payment's estimated to come out of EcoDevo.
Right, which is fun. I mean, I'd love it to come out of its own and be self-supporting and everything. But my question is those monies that are generated off of that rail spur, once it's up and going, have the potential of what expenses would be going along with that? Paying somebody to operate it for us or whatever. Is there, are we at a point where we can forecast a revenue on top of that that could be
We're
contributed
close.
toward the general fund?
We're close.
We're actually working on that right now.
We're right in the middle of finishing up that agreement to determine what it's going to be per car that comes across there.
Right.
Once I have that, then GAF and
So those
whoever.
out years could look different.
It could,
They
it
could.
certainly could.
Hopefully.
We're
I mean,
hopeful.
that's,
Yeah, you do, this is the first year you do have a rail budget, an actual fund for it. But yes, because those agreements haven't been signed and because we don't have any
we
numbers.
can't count on it yet. We
Right.
don't know the traffic. It looks so doom and gloom and everything. And the only way we're going to get out of this, and, you know, he's a great man and he's not up here anymore, but, he's not part of our community, he's moving away, but he's always part of our community. We got to grow our way out of this. And we're on the way.
Well, and just to that, just because I don't want to leave it at doom and gloom for you all, you really are. This year you added $1 million in new construction, and last year was over $1 million. So you're seeing consistent growth of this commission's efforts to continue to incentivize that. It's just, and Rod would have said this too, development's a long game.
It is. So,
And the upfront costs always overpower the income stream, because that income stream is it follows, it doesn't lead.
I have
Right.
a question about, and I'm not sure if you can clarify this. The revenue neutral rate doesn't take into account growth at all, does it?
nope.
Nope.
Is there a way to capture that in a percentage, a number, what an existing structure that, I mean, there's some inflation on that, but versus the growth that we're adding in new properties, can we see that somewhere?
We usually get it from the county.
calculate it,
that-
Yeah, we could calculate it. Like I said, it was in your revenue neutral packet. It came out to like
It did-
1,072,000 or something.
And is there anywhere where that's projected with tax abatements where we can see where that's going to start coming in?
Because they're in a year behind, it's tough.
Okay.
It is tough, and so when you get a project and you get that return on investment spreadsheet that you got from Wichita State that does all those, it assumes that you're going to take the full valuation. And the problem that we have with valuation increases, of course, is that you can't exactly tie each one. We can tie some of them if they have EDX or IRBs or such things, and we can, and we do. But it's 10 years out. So the county gives us a spreadsheet, shows all of it, every tax exempt property, including those. We see when they roll off. It takes a good while because you might approve a project, then they have to build the project, and then taxes are in arrears then. So it might feel like you're 10 years out, but in taxing years, you might only be not quite there. You might be 7 years out yet. So we have given those projections in the past, and it's something I'm certainly happy to do for you. But yeah, I could look it up here while we're here if you want, what the county gave us the last time, and give you an idea of what's rolling off a little bit when.
Mostly, I'm trying to understand the long term.
Horizon.
Yeah. Is there stuff that's suddenly going to pop up that we're like, oh, great, awesome.
Well, and that.
Or is this just like, oh, this is really?
No, there's stuff that's going to pop up. There's a lot of stuff that's going to
Okay.
pop up. Start coming back onto the tax rolls and everything. But Daniela hit on it, and it's worth repeating, okay? We don't know what the legislature is going
Yeah,
to do.
no,
So we have to be very, very careful and prudent right now because there are plans out there that could prevent us from taking any of the new ones that we're anticipating
Yeah.
3 years down the road. They
Okay,
could actually
okay.
sweep our legs out from under us,
Which is a reason to not include
which
them in
is a
the
reason to
projection.
not
Yeah.
include it in the projections.
Right.
Well, I wonder if it would be prudent to make the two major decisions to start with, and that is not accepting the budget enhancements that were proposed, and then to accept the $275,000 or half of the valuation increase right off the bat. And if you-
And the credit card.
And the credit card, yeah, approving to pass those on, the credit card fees. And if this body can approve of all that, then what's left is this $125,000 and where we allocate.
I would be good for putting it in bond and interest. I mean,
We also have agency requests.
Yeah, the 40,000 there.
Well, I thought we talked about that could come out of EcoDevo.
It has historically. I just,
Okay.
again, this was an
Okay.
option. Staff
Right.
recommends EcoDevo still,
Yeah.
but
I'm fine with that.
So we're,
I'm
we're
too.
left in with 125,000,
That's it?
and I think bond and interest, it's
That's a
there to
prudent
pay
place
the
to
Yeah,
debt.
that makes
There to
sense.
pay debt.
And then I'm going to circle back to the utilities. Did you want to leave that savings in the utility funds or shift some of it to,
You mean the 260?
I would,
or have us do a transfer into general
I would
funds?
leave it until it was needed.
That's what I would say
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And then you can just draw if you need.
And that's the credit card fees you're talking
Yes.
about? Yes.
Correct.
Yes, I would
Do
leave
you
it
need,
there.
do you need this body's approval though, if you have to draw that 260 out of the utilities and put it somewhere else?
If we don't already have it as a transfer, we may. That's again why in those other years, we took the we budgeted the direct transfer from that, so we didn't have to come back to you.
Yeah.
Well, so.
But it's completely up to
I would prefer
you.
to leave it where it is because there is a operating theory in the community
Yeah,
Yeah.
here we go.
that it needs to stay where it is. It needs
Yep.
to stand on its own, and it needs to
Yes.
not be a savings account or revenue arm of the general fund. So if it comes to it, come to us and we can help.
And that would be the theory, I think. This is the narrative that
The
then if
bank
it's-
of water.
if it's
or-
making more than what we actually need, then we should reduce the
Correct.
rates. That's the theory. Okay.
Or we wouldn't have to raise
Which it
them.
isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, we would just leave them, but we wouldn't have to
Okay.
raise them.
Right.
That would,
Can you, with years of experience, how do you look at the future then when you're, I mean, like what you're talking about makes sense now, and then next year, how do we end up with 500,000 or 600,000?
Well, then there's more decisions next year. This is the best decision we can make now.
yeah.
And-
With the information we have, and
Yeah.
then next year when we have this discussion again, we'll know, we'll have a clearer picture of what the legislature is going to do
Yeah.
Yeah.
for next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really the best we can do.
Okay,
at
I
this
just
point.
don't, I'm not, yeah, it's hard, having not done it, to know how much to
Yeah.
focus on now and how much to focus on the projection.
Yeah.
Can you
To
explain
balance.
really
The thing
briefly
to not do is panic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that 103% thing that they're talking about in the legislature? Do you know?
Oh, yeah. So, and we talked about this a little bit at your last budget work session. That would basically mean that even if you wanted to take more tax dollars, you would be capped and it would go to a public vote if it was more than
Okay.
3% over.
Okay.
So some of the testimony given by cities, both staff and electeds, have been that if you are a growing city, you might have a valuation increase by much more than 3%, and that it felt like it penalized cities that were growing. The other piece of it is, as you know, we set our incentive programs to do that long-term return on investment you're all talking about. There's also been complaints that if there was a cap, you would not be able to capture that return on investment dollars,
Right.
which would kind of nullify the math that worked out at the beginning. So those are a couple of things they're looking at. There's been constant testimony to say if they did put in some sort of limitation on a city's authority to be able to raise taxes as needed, there's been asked for carve-outs for economic development projects. Those have been very hard pushback on. The state legislature does not seem to want to keep those carve-outs.
Yeah.
You might remember a couple of years ago, they do require us now every time we do one to submit it to the state with all of the information, and they have that on a big dashboard for transparency's sake. So we have to report now all of those things over $50,000 to the state to continue to keep track of, because they want to know where tax dollars or potential revenues are going. Those are probably the big ones that have
Goodness.
come across.
Yeah.
But taking it to a vote, and then your financial advisors and your bond counsel also speaking against these, because it kind of takes away a city's ability, if needed, to raise taxes. It's a very local control issue. If something happens, we always want to do the best, and you will.
And the scary thing is, there's the legislature's looking at property tax reform and possibly getting rid of that and carving that out and everything. That turns around and would make us subject to a formula decided in Topeka and really kind of handcuffs us, takes away some of our home rule, you know, controlling our own destiny.
It really goes back to the people in the community. If they don't like what their elected officials are doing, get rid of them and hire ones that will do it. I mean, we're put here by the will of the people, and people lose some of their power when this kind of thing. This is just one more way for the state to do this. They tried something back in 2015 to really strangle the locals and how they've always tried something, and this is just one more attempt. They really just need to be minding their own business at the state.
Well, in sound bites, it sounds great, but in execution, it's...
I know, but that's really, they got enough to do there. They don't really need to be worrying about what we're doing.
Well, I would just say that I think this body can feel pretty good about giving a 2 mil reduction and only taking 2% of the assessed increase, not doing the budget enhancements. I think those right there will show some good faith from this body that we're hearing our citizens.
Yeah, not covering the county's portion of
And not, and especially the fixed income people that, you know what, this is the best. This is like carving out right down the middle of the very best we can do with what we're given.
One other big picture question, just for history's sake. The COLA and merit increases, is that that was a policy or just when did that, I remember when there was sort of an assess, and was that something that there's a plan to stick with that? I mean, that is clearly the biggest expense, those increases year by year. And is that?
And it also ties into keeping the quality people in this organization that is required. Otherwise, they just go to the private sector or some other bigger city that can pay $5 an hour more. And
I'm not questioning it specifically, just more of the
that could
kind of the
be
plan.
That could be something that really has to be looked at on the next year budget that's looking at negative, you know. May have to do a pay freeze, you know. I just don't go on record for saying that. But those are realities that we have to manage expenses. It's not easy to increase revenues. Leroy, you know that running a business and everything. The only place that you can really, really manage is on the expense side. And then you get more work, you got more expenses. I mean,
Well, and to me, it feels like potentially an okay trade-off. The good people we have.
It's a great trade-off.
To give good, but then to not be quite as willing to hire new, to kind of expect more but pay more.
Well, I was relieved to see that.
That is probably a summation of what our compensation study said, that we're better off keeping at least middle point, what is it called again?
Well, if
we
you look at the budget, we had the market increase when we implemented the results of the compensation plan and everything. And that's because we had the flat years. And that's because we had that constriction in the scale, both laterally and vertically and everything. And so what we can't do, and it's the same thing that we've had with managing the bond and interest funds and our reserves and everything, we can't cut it so tight that then we're playing catch up down the road. And what we have, a 12 mil increase just to write the budget, you know, we can't
I was
do
about
that.
run out of my neighborhood.
You know, so.
Well, and to your point about I was just going to give a little bit of staff history on the compensation study. Daniela might have more to offer, but it was brought before the commission before we started it. We went through the process. Staff and the commissioners were told of the results. Where to land that benchmark, the commission chose, due to budget reasons, to benchmark the entire city at the 60th percentile in the region. They were offered that and a 70th percentile option. The 70th percentile option had a lot more costs involved, but that was to continue to keep us within that market rate and just above the average. The recommendation moving forward on the study was to benchmark the cost of living increase with the surrounding areas and take that on the advice. So it's 3% this year, but it gets looked at every year. So if inflation was to go down, we might see that go down. I think if that happened, it would probably affect all of our funds. So
I'd like to add one more thing, because I think we heard from our employees that this 6% essentially, 3%, up to 3% being merit, and then 3% being a COLA, which is applied on 1/1 or the first pay period, really signifies to them how much we value them. And they are very thankful and appreciative of this commitment, knowing that it is subject to our finances, commission approval, all of that. I say that because we are looking at where the inflation rate is for labor, and where I know everything is more expensive, and where our departments that we're competing for are sitting, and we tend to be just a tad bit lower, which makes it, depending on who you are, it might be a little easier to just go down the street and get a government job. But because we've chosen to be at 60%, if this is a fair statement, we have to play a little harder to keep those good employees. And I think 60% was a good choice. But again, they are very aware that could change, and we are proposing it as we would like this, and we think it's a good option, but it is subject to what you think. We also asked our colleagues, I don't know if we shared this, we asked our colleagues, our competitors, if you will, what are you paying? And from as low as 1% and as high as 6%. So I can say that we are at the higher end of what we're offering for our employees, and that's a blessing.
And let's also be clear, a merit is an earned increase. It's not
Correct.
a granted increase.
Correct.
So does the city operate under a pool, or is it a?
It is not pooled. It is a step. If it's pass, no pass, or you get it or you don't get it.
So if you're
full
on a PIP,
3%,
you don't get it.
You don't get it.
If you're not on a PIP,
Yeah.
otherwise.
Or you're not performing.
A good performance review, you get it. So it's that budgeting on health insurance and on merit increases. You have to budget. Everybody gets everything.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the year, you recalc and you go, okay, well, we didn't have as many family households, so that side of the health and insurance premium was a little bit less. Not everybody got full merit, so that expenditure was a little bit less. But when you start at the beginning of the year, you got to put the whole in.
My questions are not questioning whether you should do it. It's just simpler.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to.
They're good questions.
That is another narrative that occasionally pops up on Facebook. Well, I didn't get 6% raise in my whatever, but I also have a wife who works in public education, and it's a similar kind of. Those
you
little
ask-
bits are a big.
And you didn't ask that individual, what was your last performance review?
I know.
like?
I know.
That might have
No.
something to do with it.
Would you? Well, I'd ask, would you like us to continue going through the positions? I think.
I think we have them for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Reading.
think it's, I mean,
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding, is that we're going to take some of the positions that are open and delegate some of those duties to other,
No.
or,
No.
no? Okay,
Positions that are currently on the Manning chart will remain on the Manning chart and filled when they find the right candidates in need, correct?
Correct.
Some of those are seasonal positions, some of those are true positions. Any existing positions are remaining, and they will be filled when they can get to them. We are not adding any new positions. So the
Right.
ask that came for us at the last meeting for a CBB, for analyst, for 3 fire,
Code
and code
6 new
enforcement,
positions.
6 new positions, we are not authorizing those. We are not funding those.
okay,
Did that answer your question?
yeah.
I think, Melanie, you had stepped away when we were talking about that additional 125,000 that is left after remember that little sheet on the airport and the 125 that was left out of the 275 we would be taking? We were talking about that going into the bond and interest fund, just putting that into the bond and interest fund. I mean, if we do that, I don't mean to throw a kink into things because we're all on the same page, but I will just throw this out. If we didn't do that, then we would be accepting perhaps 25% of the assessed value. So so I'm like, oh, well.
I know, it sounds good on paper. I just
know.
don't know that I think it might cut us a little too close.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I would say, knowing how much stuff you have on your later years and
Yeah,
how much stuff
yeah.
you have on the very near horizon, it may
It may hurt.
hamper some of your desire to grow in the future.
yeah.
We're already cutting it really close.
It's
Very
going to be a
close.
tight landing.
It's.
Next year will be.
very
It,
tight
it kind of felt
say
good for the
Thailand.
moment. We're on a roll.
We're about to take off.
I had one item that I think Rich, you had asked at a work session about library capping. So the budget they proposed comes to us, and essentially there isn't much we can do about. I'm sure there's KSAs that if Chris were here, he could tell you what we can or can't do. But there's not a whole lot we can do once it comes to us because our board is approved. What we can do is create a charter ordinance that caps it at a certain levy. So that would have to go through a charter ordinance. So if we continue to get those increases, then
Right. So
That's
we
how
have a
you-
recourse in
Yeah,
out
we have a
here
recourse,
that
correct.
that ask increase this year, we can't do anything about, but we have a plan if we need to exercise that option. Thank you for bringing that back.
I think I have notes on what all you're expecting to see, and it sounds like you're probably ready to see it on Tuesday night as a solid draft.
Commissioners? I think so.
Yep,
Okay.
I think so.
Is there any questions? We went through the code enforcement position, we talked on fire. Is there any of the other two positions that you want us to talk to you about? So you see what differences might be? I'm just double checking why everyone's here.
No.
Because you have a work.
You're going to redelegate, you're going to delegate the work that would otherwise be done by that position. You're going to have to find ways to have help to take care of those projects is what it boils down to.
on those positions, for example, the fire EMS positions, those
Yeah.
will come to you as a recommendation sometime
From this safety.
early in the 2027.
Okay.
The CVB position will be, duties will be redistributed so that the position can,
Yeah, redistributed, or some things we'll just won't be able to
I'd
make happen.
reach out to the local universities and WSU for analyst, intern, or whatever to help offload any of that.
Right. And we've
They're always
utilized,
looking for research project type.
yeah, we like our interns. We have
Yeah,
a
we
very good relationship with Bethel on that.
Yeah. The management analyst, because that one's in my office, I've already started looking at ways to fill that capacity gap. And the code enforcement. Code enforcement is on our strategic plan to bring to you, bring the ordinance back and bring kind of all of it back. So we'll have a work session about that where we can tell you what we're doing, whether or not on paper it's working, what you think, and then maybe to you in some way, shape, or form in the next 12 months.
Are you going to start asking more of your commissioners to try to fill in some of the gaps? Like code enforcement?
Is
Oh, yeah. I could put a red light on my car. Code enforcement commissioner.
I'll get you a vest.
Because I tell you what, I see that all the time. I'm like, man, if I just had my red light on here and code enforcement on my car, I could stop and do it. I could take care of it. 'Cause
What commissioner did we have? What was her name? She had a Marge?
Marge Roberson?
Oh,
I think so. Didn't
Was
she
she on
have her
city?
little notepad? Yeah.
But she was in county too.
Yeah, she was. a
It might have been
county commissioner
Beulah
and a-
Day also.
Huh?
Might have been Beulah Day also.
Yeah, it was Beulah.
We need to bring back the.
I love that name.
All right.
She
Well,
was big into that.
All right,
there-
anything else?
Oh, thank you. Oh, if staff, I mean, since we took up most of the, if you're okay, Rich, with asking staff if they have anything that they would, our leadership team, if they have any input, any questions, any thoughts? No.
Mr. Palmer.
The sky's the limit.
Don't botch the landing.
And the meeting's over.
All right, I guess we are adjourned.
well, thank you, everybody, too,
everybody.
for all your help with this. We really appreciate it.